In 1995, police in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania were investigating a pair of bank robberies that struck them as somewhat odd. The bank robberies were related in that security footage had captured the same two men committing both in the same manner. One would wait in line, acting as a lookout, while the other stuck up the teller with a handgun. In both robberies, the men made off with a few $1,000s. Not the most sophisticated of heists, which, paired with the fact the men were clearly recognizable in the footage and seemingly made no attempt to conceal their identities, made it seem like there might be something more to this. The bank staff confirmed the men's faces were plainly visible. They weren't wearing tights or sunglasses or fake mustaches, and it didn't seem like they had wigs or makeup or anything like that. For such straightforward robberies, you'd think they'd just have the classic balaclava and hood combo. Even stranger, the men had seemingly made a point of looking directly at the security cameras and smiling. What the hell was going on? A few days after the robbery, police arrested Clifton Johnson, who was wanted in connection with two other robberies that had taken place the previous year. Police soon realised that Johnson was the plain-faced lookout in the recent bank robberies, and he admitted it. Well, that was easy. I guess they really did just rob a bank with no disguise. Shouldn't be too hard to find the gunman then. But several months passed with no further arrests, and eventually the police released a photo of the gunman on Pittsburgh Crime Stoppers, a segment on the local news. Anonymous tips poured in, and within an hour of the broadcast, police had arrested McArthur Wheeler, who was a striking match with the robber on the surveillance footage and also had a stupid name. McArthur, as a first name, the Mac part of these names is short for the Gaelic Mac, which means son, as in Ronald, son of Donald. So McArthur doesn't even really have a name. He's just son of Arthur. I wonder where either of his parents even named Arthur. Anyways, when McArthur Wheeler was shown images of what appeared to be a very clearly identifiable him robbing a bank with a gun, his response was one of confusion and despair. He said, "But I wore the lemon juice. I wore the lemon juice." Alright, well, what are you talking about? Wheeler explained that Johnson had convinced him of a genius plan to rob the banks and get away with it. Johnson's idea was lemon juice. You know when you're a kid and you learn lemon juice can be used as invisible ink and then remember it for the rest of your life because when you're a kid you're certain that will one day prove invaluable information. Well, Clifton Johnson had obviously not remembered this very well as he was somehow under the impression that just as lemon juice could be used to write hidden messages, it would also be undetectable in surveillance footage. Basically, he thought it was impossible to take a picture of lemon juice, I guess. I suppose he was sort of onto something. I mean, can you see any lemon juice in this picture? No, but Johnson somehow thought that the lemon juice would obscure whatever it was smeared on, in this case the bank robbers' faces. Wheeler told police he didn't initially believe Johnson. That's a good instinct, McArthur. But that was until he put some lemon juice on his face and then took a Polaroid picture of himself. He was absent from the photo. This convinced him to join Johnson in robbing banks with lemon juice smeared on his face. Police could not account for how Wheeler's experiment was a success. Well, other than the likelihood that he had made a balls of it and just not been in frame. Maybe he'd gotten lemon juice in his eyes and couldn't see right. Maybe he was just an idiot. No, I guess at this point in the story his idiocy is beyond question. In court, Clifton Johnson testified against McArthur Wheeler and received a 5-year prison sentence. Wheeler went to prison for 24 years. This Johnson guy sounds like a real jerk. A couple of years later, David Dunning, a social psychologist, was reading about the story of the lemon juice robbers and came to the conclusion, if Wheeler was too stupid to be a bank robber, perhaps he was also too stupid to know that he was too stupid to be a bank robber. That is, his stupidity protected him from an awareness of his own stupidity. With his graduate student Justin Kruger, he authored a paper in 1999 entitled Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. It's basically about how when you're ignorant, you don't even know how much you don't know. Like, if I wanted to make a video game, I know enough about programming and 3D modeling to know that there are things I don't know and would have to learn, like weight painting for the animation rig or UV unwrapping. Ugh. Therefore, I would have pretty low confidence I could make a good video game. But someone who doesn't even know that stuff exists probably thinks there's much less to learn than there actually is, and is probably in the habit of telling game developers to just do X. The sort of person who thinks coming up with the ideas is the hard part. Minimal competence, maximum confidence. This is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, which you may have heard of before. I think the scariest part of this story is that Johnson and Wheeler's actions are just considered regular old human stupidity. Like, it's normal to think lemon juice makes things invisible to cameras, or that you're the first person to think of this, and to be so confident in this that you'd be willing to engage in such high-stake risk as robbing a bank on the back of it. To me, that's abnormal. Like, that's not just typical human error, that's like a serious impairment. It only makes sense to me that these guys were massively drug-addled, or they're the sort of people that you really shouldn't call stupid. You know, that's not funny. The idea that they fall under an acceptable tolerance of intelligence, that society allows them to live their lives unsupervised and be prosecuted by the justice system like any of the rest of us, now that is concerning on many levels. Well, best not to think too deeply about bank robberies committed with lemon juice. Instead, watch more of my videos. They're similar to this one, but cover different topics. Well, you probably could have guessed that. You can subscribe to see more of my videos in the future, as in you'll see the new ones as I make them, and you can join the channel membership to support me monetarily. That means you give me money for my services to the community. Thank you, and until next time, stay safe. In 1995, police... In 1995, police... Why do you keep saying police? In 1995, police... A few days after the robbery, police arrested... What?